Alright, so this is what we have so far in terms of the development of the placenta. So you have fertilization taking place, where you have the sperm entering the oocyte and forming a zygote. So obviously you'll have the division, so from one cell, so it'll become 2 cells, and then 4 cells, 8, and then 16. So at day 4, we have this, which is the morula stage, where we'll have an inner cell mass, which is shown here in blue, and then we'll have an outer cell mass, which is shown here in red. So this inner cell mass, the one shown in blue, is what we will call the embryo proper, which is also known as the baby, and this is basically what we become, where we come from the inner cell mass. And then for the outer cell mass, it will basically turn into the placenta and then the membranes that will surround the embryo. And this is on day 4. So as we move forward, what will happen is this blastocyst. So basically the morula will, as it becomes bigger, it will have a fluid, it will start forming a fluid-filled cavity called a blastocele, and then the inner cell mass will sort of accumulate in one of the, on one of the sides, and here still you have the outer cell mass. And what will happen is this blastocyst will hatch out of the zona pellucida, and this happens on day 6. So once it hatches out, we have, if you can call it, a change of name. So at this stage, the outer cell mass will be called a cytotrophoblast. So the outer cell mass here will be called a cytotrophoblast, and then the inner cell mass here will be called an embryoblast. And the side with the embryonic cells will be called the embryonic pole. And on this side, the cytotrophoblast cells will grow more, so they'll start like sort of growing like this. And the opposite side will be called the epiembryonic pole. Now, what we want is basically the implantation of this into our uterus. So if we look at the uterus, we have different layers. So we have the functional layer here, and I'll go into in a bit. I'll go into the details of what constitutes the functional layer. But then the uterus itself, we have the perimetrium, the myometrium, and then obviously the endometrium. And the myometrium is what basically causes like where the contractions happen. So anyways, so within the endometrium, it's going to be highly vascular, and it's going to have secretory glands. And the reason for this is because of the stage of the menstrual cycle that we're at. And this is like the perfect environment for a fertilized egg to embed into the endometrium. So within the endometrium, we have what we call the functional layer, which constitutes the zona compacta. So here, the most superficial layer is the zona compacta, and then we have the spongy layer here, and then we have the basal layer. So the functional layer is this, the zona compacta and the spongy layer, and these two, aka the functional layer, is what gets sloughed off during menstruation, and the basal layer does not get sloughed off during menstruation. So the embryo here will implant itself into the most superficial, which is the zona compacta, and the spongy layer right here. All right, so on day 7 or 8, you will have the growth of these things called syncytiotrophoblasts. that will embed themselves into the functional layer, as we said before, which is the zona compacta and the spongy layer. And what happens is, because on day 14 of the menstrual cycle, you have the ejection of the oocyte out of the ovum or the egg cell. So what gets left behind is the corpus luteum, and it's the corpus luteum that secretes a lot of progesterone, and this progesterone causes the endometrium to be like nice and thick and vascular, as well as secretory. So now that we have the implantation or the syncytiotrophoblasts growing into the endometrium or into the decidua basalis, what they'll do is they'll secrete a lot of HCG. And why this is important is because the corpus luteum has a lot of HCG receptors. So when this HCG goes to the corpus luteum in the ovaries and it binds to the corpus luteum receptors, you have again an imminent further increase in progesterone. And this increase in progesterone will cause the functional layer, as we said, which was the zona compacta and the spongy layer, to thicken even more. So it becomes even more vascular, it becomes even more secretory, and it basically grants the perfect environment. It has a lot of carbohydrates and lipids and glycogens as well. So it basically further enhances the environment for that implanted embryo to grow. And that was the first part of placenta development, and then the second part I'll go into in the next video.